In the last video, I talked about some popular source ports for Doom and a few other Doom engine games. However, I missed a few ports. I don't think I'll ever be able to cover all the source ports that were ever released for Doom, because there are so many of them, and some of them don't even work on my machine, no matter how hard I try to set them up. So in this video, I'm going to cover a few more source ports. Well, the ones that work at least. I'll also be including some multiplayer ports as well. I should note once again that as the title implies, this is a subjective look at source ports, which means a lot of this is just my opinion. I'll sprinkle in some facts and information about the ports as usual though. Now with that said, let's start this video off with something that's a little bit more on the vanilla-esque side that I wasn't able to cover in the last video. Here's the Eternity engine. The Eternity engine is a source port developed primarily by Team Eternity. It started development in 1998 as a derivative of the Boom source port, which was also the basis for plenty of the source ports in my previous video, such as PRBoom Plus of course, and even ZDoom. The engine was originally designed in mind for a total conversion called Eternity TC, not to be confused with the 1994 WAD with a similar name. However, development of that total conversion was abandoned, but work on the source port went on. The latest version was released last year in 2018, and has quite a bit of features. It includes a different but similar rendering engine that fixes some of the quirks of the original Doom renderer, supports a specific computing language, EDF, includes ACS support like ZDoom and its derivatives, and has an options menu not too dissimilar from PRBoom Plus. It almost feels slightly like an in-between of PRBoom Plus and ZDoom, but leaning more towards the former. One thing it has that ZDoom doesn't is vanilla Doom demo support. Also in progress is support for Heretic, Hexen, and Strife, which is something PRBoom Plus doesn't have. If all goes well with the support for other games, we might have an excellent widescreen port to play old Heretic demos on. Heck, I might even consider starting up a Heretic equivalent of the Doom Speed Demos archive if developers get the vanilla demo support working for it as well. Now with that one Boom-derived source port mentioned, I should probably talk about another Boom-derived source port that started development a bit more recently, even more recently than Doom Retro. Here's LZDoom. LZDoom is a derivative of GZDoom, which in turn was a derivative of ZDoom, which in turn was a derivative of Boom. Anyways, the latest version was released in July, as of this recording at least. It's based on a slightly older version of GZDoom and has some features GZDoom doesn't have. For instance, if you set it up properly, you can get a fake split screen kind of thing working for it if you wanted. It also supports certain commercial and non-commercial releases, such as Sigil and No Rest for the Living as iWads, provided you have the original game WADs in the same folder of course, and it also has direct 3D support too. Most notably, at least to me, it even comes with its own unique difficulty, Unholy Massacre. This difficulty gives you half the ammo pickups and twice the enemy damage. Kind of like the opposite of I'm Too Young to Die. Lord help you if you try to play it on fast though. I tried it and died on E1M1, the first level. Maybe I was just playing poorly. Anyways, Heretic also has its own unique difficulty. 1,000 deaths await thee, which has pretty much the same thing. Except it's worse, because the ammo in the regular Heretic difficulties was already stingy enough to begin with. I don't even want to try E4M1 with this difficulty. Not yet, anyway. Also, it makes the enemies in Black Plague respawn. How evil. Let's get fancier with these source ports. I didn't mean to do these in a very specific order, but that's how it ended up in the last video. So now I'm going to talk about a port whose name is kind of perplexing to me. Edge? Rege? 3DGE? I'm gonna go with 3G. This port is, interesting. It starts off screaming at me. And when you get into playing it, it has a bunch of fancy graphic effects turned on by default that makes my computer fans get really noisy. It also has heretic support. Sort of. But I don't know if it should market itself on that. The UI in it is really buggy, but hopefully they'll fix it in the future. The most important thing about this port to me is that it's the one where you can play Duke It Out in Doom on. That mod is really nice, and it almost makes me completely forgive all the little quirks that this source port has.
Come get some. Who wants some? Let's dance, girls.
Still gonna make fun of this source port silly name though. Breege. Now, let's get fancier. This next source port was last updated at the end of 2010, but it still has some interesting graphic options. Here is Vavoom. That's a catchy name to say, isn't it? Vavoom is, well, with the model pack it comes with, kinda looking like an early PS2 or GameCube game. The lighting effects you see sometimes are kinda pretty, but as is the case for Doomsday, not for me. Like Doomsday though, it has support for other Doom engine games such as Heretic and Hexen, which also have their own model packs, and I think they look better than the Doomsday models, but still aren't for me. Most importantly, the developers also include support for Strife. Strife is special because Vavoom was one of the first to port the game, because for the longest time the original source code for the game was considered lost. I think it still is, but the developer of Vavoom reverse engineered it and shared his work with the rest of the Doom community, including the developers of Chocolate Strife, who later went on to work on the Veteran Edition re-release of it published by Night Dive. This port has a lot of historic value for any fan of Strife, but it still has a bit of graphical quirks that I don't think I'll ever get over. Maybe if it got updated with some more options and fixes, I'd play it more, but I included it here primarily for its historical value more than anything else. That's all I have for the single player portion of this video. So now I want to talk about the multiplayer ports. There were two problems I encountered when making this video though. Nobody was playing some of them, and I have no friends who are willing to join a server with me on some of these peculiar ports at least. On the bright side, some of them have single player support while the others have bots, so I'll go from there. Allow me to start this little segment off with my first real multiplayer experience of Doom, ZDaemon. ZDaemon holds a special place in my shriveled dark heart, because it's where I fought endless hordes of demons together with my fellow Marines for the first time. Now granted, I really sucked at the game at the time, but it was fun nonetheless. Looking back at it, I think the netcode might not hold up as well as I remembered. I connected to a server in the US not too far away from me with bots, and my ping was still too messy to get a really fluid experience. It was definitely playable, but it still felt a bit off. Oh well. Unfortunately, I didn't find anyone playing this port. I couldn't find bots either, but they may or may not be lurking in one of the servers elsewhere. Because of this, I went into the single player instead. I wish more people were playing this so I could test out how the netcode feels compared to ZDaemon, but the single player experience reminds me of something between Crispy Doom and Pure Boom Plus. It has some nice settings too, but alas, I might have to cover this one again at a better time. This one is the most popular contemporary source port for multiplayer. It is the successor to the Skulltag source port, made by most of the same people after the original lead developer left the project. This port is based on ZDoom, albeit an older version, so it has a bit of ACS and Decorate support going for it. So if you want to play fancy mods like Quake Champions, Doom Edition, among other things, this is a great choice. The other ports might provide a more vanilla-esque deathmatch experience if this isn't your thing though, provided people are actually playing them. Hey, it's a 25-year-old game with a heavier focus on single player, so cut these ports some slack. Anyways, that'll be it for this selection of source ports. Which source ports haven't I mentioned that you would like to hear me blather about? Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you liked the video, thumb it up. If you want, you can support me with a coffee in the description. Never necessary, but always appreciated. Thanks for watching the video, and until next time, toodaloo.